Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and thank you for our panelists joining us. We'll just do some quick introductions of everybody, and then we'll get into the panel. So I'm Samantha Rowles, Serco Managing Director for our Mobility and Emergency Services sector. Essentially, we're a government outsourcing company for most things, actually, if you look us up, if you don't know us. And I've been in the region for nearly 15 years now. So we see quite a lot of change, especially in the traffic, which we're going to be talking about today. Saurav, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Saurav from Indian Green Building Council, part of Confederation of Indian Industry, and I'm here at the Critical Infrastructure Summit. Thank you for the invite. And I take care of the green certification programs for cities' infrastructure. And infrastructure, I mean mainly the transit infrastructure, the metros and the railways, which is also going green in the country. Yeah.
Thank you. Laura?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Morgan, and I am the Cost Estimation Lead at Focal Middle East. Thank you.
I'm Roger Cruickshank from Atkins Realis, Senior Director Transport Lead for the region. I've been in the region nearly 20 years. Planes, trains and automobiles are what I do every day. Thank you.
My name is Tareq Latayfeh. I'm a Regional Director for Infrastructure with Kia International Consultants. I have been in the industry for more than 20 years and with experience in both the North American region and the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Tareq. Okay, so we're here today to talk about traffic. Now, please put your hand in the air if you've had a whinge or a moan to somebody about the traffic situation this week. Everybody's hand should be going up at this point. I feel like this is the most interesting and hottest topic on everybody's lips at the minute. I know I can't have a conversation with most people without somebody having a moan about it. It's like our very own version of the UK supermarket food prices, which I've just come back from and heard a lot about as well. So, I mean, traffic in cities, it's not unheard of. I think there are traffic in every city, you know, sort of across the world. But from a regional perspective and a population perspective, we have seen huge increases in populations, especially in cities like Dubai. So we've gone from 1.9 million people back in 2010 to 3.9 million this year. And Riyadh has similar stats as well, you know, almost doubling. And that really does sort of impact the traffic that we're seeing around the cities. And whilst it's not necessarily unique, we do see issues like this in other cities in Asia and Africa. What we want to talk to today and get to the bottom of is sort of those root causes and why that's happening and what is it that we can really do about these things. You know, these things are impacting productivity massively, people's travel journey times. It's even impacting people's mental and physical health. And how do we sort of look at sustainability as part of that solution as well? So if we can kick off with you, Roger, on your thoughts around what are those root causes, aside from the population increase, which of course we are already aware of?
Well, I think it's all part of where you've also come from, I think, as well, because obviously people are accustomed to having mobility at their fingertips, and therefore, obviously, people have generally said, well, the first thing I must get after I'm employed is a car. However, it is worth highlighting that my daughter, who is 21, doesn't want to drive and doesn't want to own a car because she's seen the benefit of digital. She's seen the benefit of Careem and Uber and doesn't see the need and the hang-up of going to a petrol station and dealing with the service and dealing with the insurance and whatever. So I would say that whilst the root cause is certainly around the fact that each of us is looking for our own mobility. So it's everyone's problem except your own. And this happens time and time again. We talk about these things, but actual fact, what do we do about it? And I'll give you a personal reflection. I'm not in Hamburg this week at the World Transport Congress because I've decided not to travel this week because I'm traveling next week. So it's a choice that you make as an individual that will actually see real root change in what's going on. So the root cause is we all want to travel all the time, unhindered. We have to make a choice about what we do and also how we interact. So obviously we now work from home a little bit, and so some of us are making some choices there. But genuinely, it's how we do it for ourselves and how we do it for our next generation.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing there's definitely cultural factors there. If we look at the high dependency on private vehicles here versus somewhere like the UK, in the UK, usage is 30%. In somewhere like Riyadh, the stat is actually 90% of residents using their own car. And I think a lot of these issues are driven from other sort of forms of mobility being underutilised, and that's something that I'd be keen to talk about as well. So the existing public transportation systems in the Middle East are definitely underutilised, so how can their attractiveness as a solution and usage be improved? So if we can come to you, Saurav, for that.
Yeah. As we can see, Dubai is almost 83% urban, and world will be around 60% urban by 2030. If I talk about India, it is around 35% urban, but at the end of the century, it will also touch 40. And the requirement here is how we're going to address this major challenge which is coming up, as most of us are traveling on cars for our own transport. I think we need to shift from own to the shared mobility, and not only mobility, it has to be active mobility. And not only the restricted mobility, it needs to be more of a universal accessible mobility. So we need to have a shift from the car-centric approach to the human-centric approach. And basically, mobility need not be the keyword, I think, in the house. It should be accessibility. And as we can see, the different age groups from the point of view of a children, which is at the 95 centimeter height, how they look at the city, that is a livable city, that is a children-friendly city. So the accessibility is one part, and then again, how we are trying to have major integration. Because if we are to make a smart city, we want digital integration. But if we want a livable city or lovable city, what we heard yesterday in Abu Dhabi Infra Summit also, that the targets, I think we need to have basically this integration in terms of physical integration. So India, some good work has been done. You might be aware about Delhi, Pune, and this has also identified that they have been more cost effective in creating the metro network rather than the road expansion. Because this is an induced expansion, induced congestion, and it will keep on increasing, and we have to keep on increasing the road widths. At one point of time, it is not the solution. We know that. So for that, the requirement is from the very beginning, we need to look at how we can make it a shared mobility. And I talk about here avoid, shift, and improve, the three components where we need to avoid the need for travel, where the concepts like walk to work, 15-minute cities, and all those concepts on the compact city development comes in. When I talk about shift, that is the shift to the public transport, shift to walk, shift to cycle. That's what we say in India, though it is not there presently, but 30% should be for people to walk, cycle, 30% should be for public transport, and the rest 30% should be for the basically induced the congestion, the cars. So let's have the 60 or 70% reserved. And let's plan the city for the 70%. I think all the cities in the world will become more of a livable city going forward, yeah.
And so I think it's fair to say, we do sort of have a wide variety of modes of transport within our cities, but they are perhaps underutilised because of connectivity issues. So what do you think about that, Laura, in terms of, we have the metro, they have high ridership, but it's the connectivity issues that need to be solved to get people to that last part of their sort of end mile of their journey, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think we need to look at everybody as well that's using roads and transport here. So we're looking at low to mid earners as well, and the people that keep the UAE and other cities and countries running. So if they are the people that are using those types of transport, then they need to be factored into making it accessible for them. And there's a commute can involve 3 modes of transport just because of connection issues. And I think that's important. I also think we need to look at the transport options, not just countrywide, but community-wide as well, because it goes so far and then there's no alternative. And I think just, touching on the traffic issue as well, it forms my decision-making every day. It's the reason why I don't take my children to school in the morning, because then I'm late to the office or later than I want to be. And it's the reason why I'm rushing out the door of the office and factoring in an hour's commute home. So, it's impacting our lives greatly. We probably just don't realise it because it's always been such an issue, perhaps. So, but, we've seen a 6% increase in RTA metro usage in the last, so that was 2023 to 2024, there was a 6% increase. So it is, there is a demand there, and I think that needs to be actioned and acknowledged.
Great points. And Roger, just on the metro, Do you think, I think one of the biggest issues with traffic is, of course, the traffic that comes from Sharjah into the city and back again. Will we see a metro into Sharjah ever?
So I can take the history back to about 2010, where we recommended to the federal government that they actually do a metropolitan area. So a bit like London does, the boroughs all get together. So there needs to be a collective. It is my understanding that there are moves afoot now and recognition of that, and to make public transport into Sharjah more accessible moving forward. We're clearly excited by the fact that Etihad Rail, will start its services in January or thereabouts.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, for passenger services between the Emirates, which will make some difference to some people. But overall, I would say one other thing. Thinking about Riyadh Metro and how successful that has been in such a short time, it just showed that there was a latent demand waiting for something to happen. Yeah. And whilst the bus services are still catching up, it's interesting how a lot of the business centres and areas around Riyadh are running these little minibuses. In the same way, I think there are a number of little stories happening in Dubai that we don't even know about. And there are issues, I think, around legislation which prevent, some of this happening. So, let's see what happens moving forward. But yes, I hope that, I think there is a recognition that Sharjah needs now to be tackled after many, many years.
Yes, agreed. Okay, great. So let's move on, Tareq, to you. So in terms of public transportation, apart from bus and light rail networks specifically, what should regional cities be looking at in the coming years, given the population growth?
It's really a good question. Actually, we have to look beyond the rail transit and bus services. We have to look sometimes also on the regional aspects, like regional commute rails. It's very actually effective in many countries around the world, especially for satellite cities, where you need to integrate and minimize the reliance on cars. So there are very good examples across the world, like in Toronto, GTA area, where you have the rail commute is very effective and connecting greater Toronto areas with different cities altogether, which is could be applicable in the region here when we talk about, for example, how we can integrate Abu Dhabi with Dubai and and the like. Also, we have to zoom in and think about microtransit. Like microtransit actually also is very helpful because it's going to solve partially the last mile problem that is always available on the solutions we have right now, especially in controlled areas and communities where you have shuttle buses or shared mobility and similar approaches. Also, we have to think about why don't we think about water transit? We have most of the Gulf area is on the sea, right? If we want to connect Dubai and Abu Dhabi with ferries and expand on that. Similarly on the east and west coast for the Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So it's going to be very, very helpful. So there are many things we have to think beyond. And finally is air mobility. When I think about for premium short-haul services, where you have eVTOL, eSTOL, and other technologies that are very applicable for greenfield cities. So there are many really things to think beyond just rail and buses.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point on micro-mobility and greenfield cities. We're definitely seeing in the gigaprojects in Saudi Arabia, micro-mobility being sort of built into those master plans in a sustainable way. I guess, in a more brownfield city, it's how do you make that safe, especially in somewhere like Dubai, definitely, you
Right.
need sort of better safety before that can become a bit more of a mass transit, but we're definitely starting to see, and of course we've got the weather challenges as well in the summer, but definitely seeing a move towards that, so thank you. Has anyone got any views on the Dubai Loop or cable cars or flying taxis that they'd like to share? Roger, of course you have.
Well, it's my understanding that, following some of the announcements that were made a couple of months back with Elon Musk online, that again, the Dubai authorities are looking at sort of additional alternatives to that. So we know that they want to to look at this. I think the challenge is just going to be around who's going to pay for it, because I think we start to get into the realms of multiple layers, and to the point you were making about like air mobility, this has obviously been kind of pioneered by a number of startups, and will they, if they get the regulatory coverage, then how will the actual services be done? I mean, we talk about air mobility, but it is just a kind of another helicopter. So we have a lot of that regulation already in place, actually. So it's just making sure. I think a lot of it is also down to education. I think a lot of people don't know about stuff because they don't know about it. And I think we could do more, I think, to market, you know, what's going on in transportation. I am a keen cyclist. I will be out at 5:30 every Sunday morning, despite the weather. And we are improving that as well. And I think we are seeing that people genuinely, certainly through October through to April, I think are willing to walk a little bit. And I think there are, to the loop comment, there are, I think, a number of structures and interesting facilities that are coming out. And the architectural world, I think, is very excited about, you know, what could be created, you know, for Dubai going forward.
Great, thank you. And Roger, we're just going to stay with you for a second, because we're going to move on to autonomous road-based public transportation solutions. And I know that you desperately want to challenge some of Paul's comments that he made in our opening spiel. So it's being pitched as a game changer in certain markets. Is it going to happen in the region? Where are we with it? What are your thoughts around that and implementing it effectively within the existing infrastructure that we have?
Yeah, so when Paul spoke a minute ago, I was just whispering. I wasn't sure about, so I think we're quite a way off. I mean, I am on that more pessimistic side of things. I think there's a long way to go. I might suggest that we almost have a near miss every single day that we drive currently. And whilst the view is that autonomy will take away some of the human error risks that are associated with it, I think overall there's still a general challenge around us as humans giving up control, giving away the steering wheel and doing that. And I think therefore we are some way off. There was a big frenzy pre-COVID, but as we've seen, there's been quite a dumb down on all of that R&D activity. A lot of people have kind of run away from this, perhaps apart from America and these certain focused cities. And I'm all for it, but I think the actual mass availability of it, I think, is some way off.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually moderated a panel at the EVIS conference in Abu Dhabi a couple of months ago. And the sentiments there were similar as well, in terms of the technology is actually there, but the trust that people need, and maybe it's generational, maybe we'll just have to wait for the next sort of generation to come along. It certainly isn't there, nor are the policies and regulations that need to sit around that mode as well. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tareq?
Yeah, actually I agree with Roger about this. And actually, if really we want to apply this on the field, we have to start know where to start with. So we have to start somewhere where it is safer and more with existing right of way, where we know what's the traffic, and to avoid any reliability or safety issues, such as like in campuses or airports, where you really test it many times and make sure that it is workable. This is how we start with it, and with time, it is going to improve, and it will take time, as Roger said.
Yeah,
yeah.
Agreed. Okay, and sort of off the back of autonomous vehicles is the theme of sustainability, I think, and it also needs to play a part in the solutions that we're creating. It's not just any transport solution that I think we're looking at to solve our problems. Sustainability has to be a fundamental sort of aspect of that. So can we do it all, and can we do it fast enough? Can we solve this problem sustainably and quickly? Saurav, what do you think?
I think it is possible, and I would say cities are not the challenge. Cities are the solutions. Traffic is not the problem, but traffic has solutions. We have to reduce this induced traffic which is coming in. So first of all, what I see is that cities are going to be the cornerstone for the climate change. And if the battle against climate change has to be fought, it has to be fought in cities, and it has to be fought with data. So the data-centric decision-making is the key, basically, in all the city authorities. So we need the data on how many vehicles, what is the parking capacity, how the parking is happening in different trends in different parts of the cities. So no more we know our cities better, we can solve this and we can create it as a more sustainable city. So if we see, the one part is about the accessibility and affordability, where it's a table stake and it is needed for everybody in the city, where we need to look at the mobility as a service, which is need to be also researched and with the current trends, it should have and it is done in some parts in the US, and China also is looking into it, how the mobility is become more of integrated and data driven, so that the aggregators who are working are also added to the on-demand. So talking about the areas which is low density development in the cities, we need to have on-demand services, so that we address that, because sometimes that is lost in the message of connecting the major nodes. We know there are growth nodes, what happened in Singapore and what happened in many other countries also. This major node-to-node connection became the public transport infrastructure, the major corridor. And the development started happening around this. India is also looking into that, where around 500 meters from both sides of the TOD, the developments are happening, and there is TOD policy in major cities. So how we can look at compact city development, TOD policies, and going into the other side, that is basically that we need for the city. Because we know Dubai, it's a global city, and it's the economic success is already proven here. It brings some good advantages, including the social inclusiveness, and residential communities are very closely bound because high-rise development. But again, the challenges comes in when we miss out on the other parts and how we make it integrated. So there we need this aspirational metro infrastructure, or aspirational, so that people jump on from the other modes to the metro. Because it has been found in Delhi case in India, around 61% of the emission reduction has happened because of metro. Means around millions and millions of cars have been off the road. Equivalent emission reductions have happened. So that is one part on the carbon emission in sustainability. And other part is how we can look into the last mile parking policies, and then integrated mobility, which is now multimodal projects are coming up in India, where every railway station or metro station, it has to have multiple integration. We want to give choices. The city which have more choices for every individual to travel, I think is the best city. One of the example I could say on public transport is Hong Kong, where 90% people travel in public transport. So they have not stopped the buses or things. They have kept on increasing that as and when they are increasing the metro network. It means all the networks need to increase. We cannot stop because people need to have multiple options.
Yeah, and we go back to that integration, connectivity, what Roger was saying at the beginning with regards to that taking that personal responsibility as well. So there's a lot there to sort of unpick, so that's great, thank you. Now, Laura, we will come to you. We've seen a lot of initiatives around working from home and those types of things. What other things can we do that will get cars off the road whilst infrastructure continues to be rolled out to improve connectivity and integration and other modes of transport?
I think that probably comes down to flexibility. I think it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think, you know, Saurav mentioned about us looking at the data and seeing actually who the public transport users are, how many people are using those, you know, who are using taxis, how many people, and from what communities, what areas, and things like that. So I think the data would need to speak as well, but I think just the flexibility in general. So, I mean, you touched on it during our discussions on staggering school times, or dedicated bus lanes for school buses, or dedicated taxi lanes. You know, I live off Sakim, and it's very busy during peak times. And I would say every evening in the last couple of weeks, there's been an ambulance that's been trying to get through that traffic. There's no dedicated service lane. You know, it's almost impossible with the roadworks that are going on. And I think the biggest thing we need to think about is safety and the flexibility, but also looking at, you know, the vision goals that were announced, you know, many years ago now, where we're looking at enhancing the quality of life for residents, and that has to be all residents. That isn't a select pool of people. That is everybody. That's every road user. That's every public transport user. And understanding, you know, how things can be improved from their perspective across the country, which ultimately, you know, also needs to look at the 4% population growth targets year on year. Well, who is that 4% that are coming in? You know, are they going to be public transport users, or are they going to be remote workers? You know, we're an innovation hub now where, you know, we're promoting working remotely and flexible working. So I think it's understanding the human factor, the individual users, and really trying to work towards future pacing and factoring in the changes that we're going to see in the future here.
I'm not sure we are encouraging flexible working and working from home anymore. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I feel like it's almost as if COVID never happened. Everybody's back in the office. It's not as acceptable as it once was, maybe once a week, but it's certainly not as flexible and remote as it used to be. What do you think, Tareq?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, even the model has been challenged in many countries about work from home, which put more pressure on, the existing infrastructure. But always we have to think that if we want to, try to have a policy in place or just, think of ways, we have to have alternatives to the people to commute. This is where, for example, if you have a toll system, you have to also provide something else, like good infrastructure to be able to serve people, because people will want to do their own things at the end of the day. So this is where it's very crucial to have alternatives.
Can I jump in on that comment? Yeah. I think when I said we, it was like a blanket we. I know we obviously see quite a lot of media reports on that, and I know there's been a public sector announcement of the 4-day week in Dubai, similar to what Sharjah have introduced. But I also think that's probably for a completely different event and panel discussion, but the availability of office space is crucial in that. I'm part of Focal Middle East. We're a startup. We were trying to find a good office space that was central, that was near metro connectivity, and it was nigh on impossible trying to find something that was available. It was, impossible. So I think we've had to introduce remote working, and I still think it's something that should be considered. It definitely does help reduce the traffic stress, which again improves the quality of life. It means people that have got children can do the school run and things like that. But again, that's for probably a completely different panel.
Yeah, and I agree. I absolutely do think that we should be doing more of it. I just feel like we've gone the other way a bit and like COVID never happened, but I totally agree. I mean, we all wish COVID had never happened. Yes, please.
Shall I add something to the same point? Actually, in India, we know about Delhi, the capital city, and it has also been suffering the air pollution challenge because of the vehicular emissions. And we know sometimes it says the stats that Delhi has equivalent cars when we add up the Chennai's, Mumbai's, and Calcutta's, the other three metros. So in Delhi, they looked at something at odd even rule in terms of how people, but then they have metro, and then they brought this rule. I think once we have the options available, we can explore these kind of odd even, or we can have some more congestion pricing, and then parking pricing in the peak areas. We would need to have multiple CBDs. One more thing which we'd like to share, because when we have multiple central business districts, the fleet is not moving in one direction. It is going in multi-directions. So your traffic is always less, and that is also the part of the land use and transport integrated comprehensive mobility plan, where we have worked with, working in India, we have two unified metropolitan transport authority, which has just started, so that they can explore this relation of land use and transport. They need to be married so that the city gels well in the segment. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Tareq, back to you. So if we just look at master plans specifically, and I think this raises the interesting point of the differences between greenfield and brownfield sites, and we can make some great comparisons between the giga projects in Saudi and what we have here. But when we are looking at master plans and infrastructure being planned and developed, how do we account for those spikes in population growth during that period?
Yeah, first of all, especially when it comes to greenfield areas, we have to keep in mind that when we do design or planning, we have to think about, scalability, modularity, and flexibility. That's crucial to have, because the population normally growth is predicted to be higher than, the infrastructure in place. So that to keep in mind what the future vision of this. The other important point is to, think of transit-oriented developments, where also you have every mixed use around 15 minutes, 20 minutes of your, for the residents, where they, avoid to drive far away, and then you solve partially the traffic problem. So also to have like a predictive, forecasting. For example, sometimes the spikes is very important when you think of events, or like what happened in Doha in 2022. You have massive people came into to the country and were very well managed because they thought about this. So it is very important to think of this. When it comes to existing infrastructure or existing cities, It's about upgrading the infrastructure. It's more a bit more challenging because you don't have the flexibility to start from the scratch per se. Yeah.
And sticking with the design theme, Roger, how can we ensure that community connection is treated as a core design principle and not an afterthought in the development of new residential communities?
Well, I mean, I think one thing to say straight away is probably we're not trying to do residential communities anymore. I think we are trying to move towards more mixed development, so that, you know, it's kind of on your doorstep. But it's a question I asked as we were having our email conversations before. We talk about the 15 or 20-minute city, but do we really want that? Do we really want, some of us want the excuse to go out of the office for 2 hours for our dental appointment. But the hope is, obviously, that we see much more of the services on our doorstep. When I first arrived here in Dubai, it was all about getting your approval as quickly as possible. Nowadays, I think there is a great conversation that is happening around what you're trying to create as your community and how it's linked to the greater sort of transport system. So I think the blue line that's now under construction and the new ML04 that will be constructed shortly is going to start to bring sort of a unique and newness to Dubai. But at the moment, we've been a linear city. Now we're going to see the communities sort of be linked more internally within Dubai. And I think that's going to open up a wealth of kind of opportunity around fairly established communities as well as new communities, how they are linked to those, you know, main transport systems. Atkins is doing the new Maraba, the big cube, shall we say, in Riyadh. And one of the key things there has been to consider what's happening with the primary public transport system within Riyadh, and how we maneuver people around that site other than by car. And in fact, we're not actually providing some of the facilities to let cars just do whatever they want. It's to try to give people a reasonable, seamless opportunity to use an alternative to the private car.
Yeah, I love that point about residential communities, actually, and it sort of aligns with the whole live, work, play theme and people trying to sort of do it all within their vicinity. And engaging the community early on and actually speaking to people and understanding exactly what it is that people want is
well, if I may just add, one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're looking at what we call citizen sentiments. So we're now drawing on data from Snapchat, TikTok, and everything else. Admittedly, that's probably for those between 14 and 40 in terms of that. But at least we're getting a sentiment from people about what they think about public transport or what they think about traffic, you know, generally. So there is a lot of data mining going on now. It's quite clumsy to do surveys door to door with people and all that. But I think the internet clearly and all of that discussion on social media is definitely providing an insight into what people are seeing as a good thing and what's not a good thing, or what they'd like to see and what they'd like not to see, so to speak. I'm going to mention dynamic pricing. I think one of the ways that we could see a change in how people maneuver on the metro is if we did a peak and off-peak fare. It's what most other cities do around the world. We haven't done it quite yet here, but clearly there could be an opportunity there.
Snapchat. I must be just outside of the age category that uses that, Roger, so well done for that. Laura, do you have an opinion on the community connection piece?
I do, yeah. I think in principle, yes, it could work, but again, and I mentioned it earlier in one of my other points, that it doesn't focus on the low to mid income population, and they're not going to be in a 15-minute commuter belt of that 15-20-minute community. So I'm not sure it works in its entirety. And I also think the connection factor, which you've mentioned, Roger, is so important. It's a psychological and a social need that there's connection, you know, especially for teenagers. If they've been moved out into a villa community without a connection to public transport, they're often, you know, their options are limited other than repeat use of taxis and things like that. So we do need that connection as well. So that is, it's really important.
And Roger, we've touched on sort of data a few times throughout the panel. In terms of technologies and data, what what impact can connected technologies and data have in terms of design and planning public transportation systems and the management of people moving throughout that city?
Yeah, so we're using kind of heat maps and those kind of aspects to kind of work out what the cities of the future look like. And given Climatize are one of the sponsors, it's just looking at how the community of the future will look like. I think what may be really good about technology is, of course, we can switch off cars on the day they're not allowed to use them. Might be a way of helping to govern how we move around in the future. We have this notion, you have to ask yourself the question, do you have to travel? Yes or no? If you have to travel, by what means do you need to travel by? And of course, let's make sure it is the most sustainable viewpoint possible. I would say one of the great things that has happened over the last 5 years now in terms of technology is I don't need to go to Carrefour anymore. You know, we have taken away the shopping trip. I think most of us don't need to do that essential shopping trip. We still shop, but I think the essential trip, and it's probably gone largely unnoticed. It's just become part of what we do. So if those are the sorts of things that are happening, our children and our children's children are naturally going to get into a sort of activity that we would say was a real issue of transport, but won't be for them moving forward.
I'm a big fan of online shopping. I'm here for that, so I think that's a great point. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the panel now. So if we can just conclude by, if I could just ask each of you, if there's one thing you'd like the audience to take away from the panel, what would that be? If we could start with Tareq, please.
It's very important to know that the data and technology is very powerful. We need to leverage that. If we know how to use it, we can predict, the future of mobility. Very important.
Great, thank you. Roger?
I think the one thing maybe we haven't really quite touched on is net zero. So I think just as we talk about personal choice, I think it's just what we're doing around traveling in the future and getting away from using petrol cars to something else.
Great, thank you. Laura?
I think also that, we have seen advancements, and we are working with developers now that are looking at the voluntary certifications in things like Fitwell. So I think there is definitely movement from the developer side that are looking into this and taking it seriously in terms of improving the communities that they're in control of. So I think it's ensuring that we're making, viable cost-based decisions, and also appreciating that, their model is going to be completely different to a developer that doesn't factor in those types of things within the community. And Tareq, just on one thing that you mentioned earlier about the master plans, I think, we're building so many villa developments in Dubai, especially at the moment, and I think the schools that come 4 years after the villas are built are just not acceptable anymore. I think that is just such a simple tick box thing that would, make such a difference to master plans. It's don't wait for them to come and fill the houses, like build the school at the same time, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Saurav.
Yeah, I would say we need to now, as the time, we have to incentivize public transport, intermodal mobility, and interoperability. For sharing one example, which has been done in India, in Hyderabad, they have launched an initiative called MILES, Mobility Innovation for Low-Emitting Solutions. So the concept is the Hyderabad Metro, everybody traveling 1 mile is getting some kilometers added and converted into carbon emissions. He is able to contribute in terms of reduction. So everybody becomes a climate warrior in the process. And in this movement, corporate partnership is the key, because they will partner with Google, they will partner with some organizations which have huge stock of employees who are traveling. So in the next 5-10 years, let's say, it happens in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they will be able to actually say how much emission reductions, and people can go for the leisure trips. They may not take 100% of trips they take, but at least 50% of trips they will try to go for this and try to add some points in that card as a climate warrior. Because I think slowly we need to incentivize these warriors, and these kind of incentive schemes or things might work. And one more example is Pune, where we have 90% of the fleet is electric now. So from the city authority point of view, we would suggest that slowly we need to see that how our 100% fleet is electric and low emitting, and we made people jump into this low emitting journey or the mission, because it is a movement and it's a mission that we believe in India. We have launched on the World Earth Day 2021, the mission on net zero. 350 organizations have been signatories, including the metros in the country and the mobility partners. So we are looking at how they can make this change, because I think the small change of this kind of a miles initiative, or there can be hundreds of such initiatives, which engages common man, is the driver to make this thing happen in future.
Great, thank you, insightful. And for me, I think it's really, Roger, your point about taking personal responsibility. So often I think it's somebody else's problem, but actually how can we be part of the solution and not just continually whinge about the traffic, which I think happens a lot. So thank you very much from our panelists.
Please, huge round of applause for this panel. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.